Hi, Lori. How are you?
Good, Douglas. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I love the old phone you got up there on the wall. That is
Isn't
great.
that fabulous?
Does it work?
Um, it does. We wanted an actual old-fashioned analog landline, so we put in that phone because the power tends to go on and off occasionally here, and then with all today's technology, you're kind of left because a lot of times it doesn't work when that happens. So we have an old one, and it's
You
great.
know,
And
that's.
actually, I even have another one. I'll show you right here. I have
Oh
a
my
very
God.
old phone that works.
That actually still works.
It works. It's 100 years old. My grandfather bought it back in the early 1920s. Um, and it was in our house for years and years. When I grew up in Nova Scotia, we had it for years and years and years. And I moved out and at one point brought it with me. And my husband, as a gift, had it fixed so that it works. And now when the house phone rings, this one and that one both ring as well. So I actually call my mom on it because she thinks that's fun.
Well, you know what? How does it sound?
It has a nice ring, but it's the old fashioned kind of ring. It's not super loud because these phones used to actually have like a ring box with them because it's from like 1920 and they had like the phone was separate from the ringer. So, but it's a nice little gentle kind of sound. It still has that traditional old kind of sound, but it's gentle.
Well, how's the audio quality for the call?
It's excellent, actually. It's better than this one.
Is it really?
It
Wow.
really is. Yeah, it's fabulous. My mom just loves when I call her on it. So we have a good old chats on it. It does get a little tiring after a while though, because
To
you do
hold it
actually
like
hold it like this.
that. Well, and you know what the other problem with that kind of phone is? Because it's a dial. You can't call anything that says press 1 for customer
Yeah,
service, press 2, right?
it's true. And if you make a mistake, and I'm old enough to remember doing this, all the time, you have to wait and it goes all the way back and you have to hang up and you got to wait for a second for the line to end and then you pick it up and start all over again.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's still cool though. I think it's still neat to see them. And you're right
Yes.
about landlines. With those type of landlines, if your power goes out, you're still fine.
Exactly. And it's happened here a
Yeah.
few times where we've lost power for a week or more and you run around trying to charge your cells and all that stuff. So these ones always work.
Yeah. Let's see. So you are an author, right? That's why you're here. You got a book to promote. Your
Hmm.
book is called Hit and Run. We've got the cover picture. Tell us a little bit about your background first, and then we'll talk about the book.
Okay. I was born and raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia, or just outside, um, and read all my life. One of the things my parents used to do because we actually lived outside the city was drop us at the public library when they went and did their errands in the city and pick us up again. So I read all the time. We were all big readers, my mom, my dad, my sisters. Um, we just spent all the time reading and we were kind of that family. And growing up, it was such a part of my world that I actually became a librarian. And actually, another sister of mine is a librarian as well. So books just ran in the family. And I had left Nova Scotia and ended up getting my library degree in Montreal. And then I moved down here to New York, actually, and worked for New York Public Library for a long time. And then over the years, different jobs, different types of libraries, and decided one day, I'm going to write a book because I've always wanted to write a book. And once my kids kind of went off to school, that was my moment. And I started writing.
How many books have you written?
Okay, so I've written probably, that's the reality. So I've written probably close to 10. How many books? I have three out with another couple of novellas coming out at the end of this. But I have a few more in my drawer. As a matter of fact, I was working on one today that I pulled out and dusted off, and I'm just gone through final edits on as well before it goes off to my editor as my backup book. I always like to have an extra book ready just in case.
All right, so 10 books written, 3 published. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I had this question for another author that I had on a while ago, and I'll ask you the same question because I think it's kind of interesting. Do you still find that you need to have somebody give it a once over? Do you miss things like for editing purposes, for proofreading, or
Do
do you think you can just do it yourself and you're fine?
Oh no, 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 no! I not only have an editor, I have three editors. Like, no.
Oh.
I never think to myself that I can just do it myself, because the more I work with it, I go through phases. So the first phase is how much I love it. As I'm writing, I'm having a great time. And then I hit sort of the middle and go, oh, this is awful. This is horrendous. What am I doing? And then I get to the end and I somewhat love it again, but I'm not sure. So then I have to go over the whole book, and I would never trust myself to be able to find the errors or any of that stuff. So it goes to one editor and we do several rounds, and then it goes to another editor and we do several rounds, and then I get one more to just go through, because those little words, those little typos and things, they hide in there. And I actually get the third person, if they're available, to go over it, and if not, I sit down with the whole book and I get my laptop to read it back to me word by word to try and go through and catch all the mistakes.
Because there is some variation on grammar. The one thing that he brought up was the Oxford comma, where,
Yes.
and I never thought that grammar was subjective, but actually in some cases it can be.
Well, and in genre fiction, like the romantic suspense that I write, there are certain things I can get away with grammatically that I probably couldn't get away with if I was writing a different type of book. So there are certain sort of slangs and sort of slides you kind of do that a romance reader would accept. But if I try to put it out there as, the great American novel, I would get ripped to shreds for, right? So there's just sort of different sort of genre things that you end up doing as well with the language. So it's really important to me to have somebody who's familiar with it edit it, because it's different per area that you write in. All the genres are different.
Oh, I see. So different rules, grammatic rules would apply to various genres. Yeah.
Yeah, certain things just you kind of can't get away with. If you're writing a really deep work of fiction, you really need to be grammatically correct all the time, like to the letter. If I'm writing romantic suspense, it's not that it's not grammatically correct 99% of the time, but there are certain things that you can kind of get away with because of the voice that's, the character is speaking and things like that, that you can kind of move around a little bit. So there's a little bit more play when you get into genre fiction about this stuff, I think. And again, you have the Oxford comma, and there's all kinds of things ways to say things and stuff that you may do differently, even though it would be more grammatically correct to say it in one way, you may not choose to say it in that way. Like, passive voice versus active voice and things like that. Sometimes you need a passive voice on occasion when you're writing genre fiction, because your character is a little more passive, right? But you would never do that if you're writing something more formal.
Well, you know what I just thought of too? If you were doing a historical piece, and I don't mean way, way back, but even like to the 1920s or the 1930s, you would have to be careful how you worded that, because they didn't use particular phrases and forms of speech back then, yeah?
Yes, I have several friends who are historical authors, and they spend a lot of time doing research as to what words they can use and what they can't, and how it was phrased. Things were done differently. Grammar was different. It was all, a whole different time and a different set of rules apply. So actually, there was a debate among them about the new Enola Holmes. One of the characters, how his title was said, is probably not, they had this debate because it wasn't in the correct order, but then somebody said, well, he's not old enough yet to have certain titles and they'd have to wait before it. So right now it's just a sort of a gifted title until he actually goes to the House of Lords. So there was this whole big debate about that because it's different. And I was like, wow, that's a little intense for me.
So your book is called Hit and Run, and what genre does that one fall into?
So we call it romantic suspense, although I tend to think of it as more of a romantic thriller.
Okay, you want to give us a synopsis?
Sure. It focuses on the middle brother of there's a three-brother group, and they run Callahan Security Series. That's the name of the group. And Gage, the middle brother, is given the task of bringing this computer programmer back to New York. And her name is Daniela Pierce. So he has to find Danny first. He thought she was in Europe, and he didn't find her. And turns out she was in Alaska. And when he finds her, she's not a programmer, but a hacker. And she's already in big trouble. There's a group of people who found out about the software she's building, and they want it, and they've already tried to kill her for it. So it's Gage's task to get the software and he and Danny back to New York without anybody dying or having the software stolen.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fun romp, as I like to think of it. It's a thriller. This series, I've had a lot of people compare it. They tell me it's like Jason Bourne with a side of hot romance. That's what everyone refers to it as. So that's
Oh,
kind
right.
of the vibe of it.
Yeah, Jason Bourne didn't have that much romance in it, just that one girl.
That's right. So these ones have a little bit more romance than that, but they still have a lot of. Someone else said it's like James Bond without all the gadgets, and that works too.
Okay,
I don't build in a ton of gadgets.
how long has the book been out?
This one came out August 4th, I think it was, about 2 months.
August 4th. Okay. And I don't remember if I asked this or not, but are you self-published or?
Yes. Yep. I put out my own stuff. Um, it's because I don't actually fit into an actual subgenre. Um, I call it romantic suspense because that's the nearest thing, but I spend a lot of time talking to agents and editors, and they encourage me to do it myself because although they really love the book, it doesn't fit into one of their areas. That's what they always say. It doesn't fit into their box. So I just decided to create my own box. That's why I call it romantic thriller versus like romantic suspense. It's more thriller than suspense.
What is the general? I'm not that familiar. I don't write novels. I've written a couple of screenplays, which is a whole different animal.
Yes.
But what is the general take percentage for a publisher? In other words, for every dollar on sales of the book, what do they take? Is it like 20% or?
Oh no, that's far greater. If you're publishing a novel, say you're doing romance or like mine, romantic suspense, romantic thriller, they would just negotiate usually, your flat fee up front almost. They'll give you for so many books, so much money up front, and then you'll get a percentage of the book, but it would be low, like 7-10% if you're lucky.
Oh, okay. Oh, so
Yes,
it's more like a record deal where they'll pay you in advance,
exactly.
and then you got to recoup the advance before you see any money at all.
Exactly. Although they're getting a little further away from advances. But yes, generally speaking, if you're talking like what they call the big five in New York, like the bigger publishers, that tends to be what they do. So, and if you're a first time out of the gate author, it's a small advance and you have to sell it out before they'll get into. And then there's the whole question of, overseas and all those types of things, your foreign rights. And so it's sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself.
Well, yeah,
I
and
I make a much greater percentage.
well, and also now you have the tools to be able to do it. It wasn't possible back pre-internet, really.
No, it wasn't. Yes,
Yeah.
and it's really much better these days. And there's so many great groups out there that support indie authors. So there's a lot of help that we give each other on how to do things or manage it or figure it out. So it's really good actually. I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I admit it. So I like doing my own thing because then I also know that success or failure rests on me and it doesn't rest on anyone else. And I like that.
I tend to agree with that. That's true. Although the bigger the things get, micromanaging can be a real pain in the ass, and
Yes, it's true.
sometimes you have to delegate. Yeah,
It's true. And
sometimes.
it comes to a point where you can't do it all, but at
Right.
least I can have more of a hand in. If I did this through a big publisher, I would turn in my book and then the rest of it is up to them. The title and the cover and all that's up to them. Wouldn't get to choose those. So it's kind of nice to have more of a hand in your own stuff.
That's a good segue because I got one last question, and then we got to wrap it up. We were talking about. I told you that I can write screenplays or have written a couple screenplays. They haven't gone anywhere, but they're on my computer.
Yet.
But the problem with screenplays, at least from other screenplay writers that I have interviewed, is that studios feel much freer about ripping your screenplay to pieces. In other words, changing this scene to that one, cut this one, add a new scene that you never even thought of. Do publishers do that with people's novels, or are they a little more respectful of your art, your creation?
When you sign the contract and you hand in your book, you're edited. And if they don't like it, they'll come back and tell you, nope, I don't like it, fix it, and this is what I want to see. And you don't have a choice. You've got to fix it in a way that they want. I know a lot of people have been handed books back that they absolutely loved and told, no, we don't like this subplot, or we don't like the direction this went in, rewrite it. And I had to rewrite an entire book. So,
it's the same. It is the same.
Whereas if I do it myself and I have all these editors who give me feedback, and then I can work with them and change it so it works and the story is good, but nobody comes along and says to me, we don't like your story, redo your entire book, which is nice. It gives me a little bit more freedom and confidence, in a sense that this is why I get it edited so intensely, because I also want it to stand up next to these other books, right? It needs to do well on a shelf next to all these other books, so it has to be well written. But it also gives me the confidence to say, this is a really good story. I've created it, and it's gone through several edits with different editors, and everybody enjoys this story, and I know that it's good. And just because someone else comes along and says, well, I would have gone this way with it, it doesn't matter, right? Because I'm doing my own thing. But if you're with a publisher, you have to listen to your editor.
Okay. My guest is Laurie Matthews. Her book is called Hit and Run. Do you have a website you want to give out?
I do. It's lauriematthewsbooks.com. That's Matthews with 2 T's. And you can buy the Callahan Security series, which is Break and Enter, Hit and Run. Actually, it's Break and Enter, Smash and Grab, Hit and Run, at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Kobo, all the usual spots.
Okay. Laurie, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was nice talking to you. Best of